It's Tuesday evening and it's 6 p.m. This is the spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. My name is Saad and I'm in southeast London in Bromley. And I'm joined by Gregory. Gregory, are you there?
Hello.
Welcome, Gregory. The weather here in London is now raining. Well, it's on and off raining heavily. Um, the weather is, I will still say, warm. But yes, it's overcast as well. How is it where you are, Gregory?
Very, very windy with
Oh,
minimal rain, but somehow
very,
bright.
very windy, but with minimal rain, you say?
Yes.
Okay. So, yes, welcome. Welcome, listeners. The aim of our show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrusheen. And we have a new topic every week. The topic for tonight is Seeing is Believing. Seeing is Believing. And I'm going to say we are putting that in quotes because uh, let's say, people see things differently. So the meanings of these words or the understanding of these words can be quite different with different people and places how people see that. So the topic again, the title tonight is Seeing is Believing. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. I'm going to begin with what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abdrusheen is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized, and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Abdrusheen. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail Message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail Message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace, if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic we're discussing tonight is seeing is believing. Seeing is believing. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 07939 641 958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. Gregory, as usual, I looked at the topic, the title of our topic, and looked in the dictionary, and it was very interesting actually how it is defined. So just the phrase or the proverb, you can call it, seeing is believing. In the dictionary it says you need to, seeing is believing, that is, you need to see something before you can accept that it really exists or occurs. So just let me repeat that. Seeing is believing. The meaning of seeing is believing. You need to see something before you can accept that it really exists or occurs. Gregory, that definition, is that a good definition?
Well, to know whether a definition or whatever is good or not, one should subject it to some scenarios. And basically, in this case, has anyone ever seen the wind? Yet, do we have people who believe that, yes, the wind is there, yet they haven't seen it? So, should one use that expression, seeing is believing, in the case of the wind?
That's a very good point, Gregory, because now we need to understand what is the word seeing means, because from what example you just gave, it looks like if you use the word see only in a physical view. In fact, Gregory, if you don't mind, I will just tell you the dictionary. When I looked up the word see, just looked up that word see, I got these 2 definitions in it. It said see, perceive with the eyes, discern visually. So that in a way that exactly accords with that example you've just given there. That can you see the wind? So do you believe
Therefore,
that? Yes, go on.
What is being stressed here, seeing is believing, is only a figure of speech.
Yes.
And when a figure of speech is used, then It is the intuitive meaning, which is all-embracing, that one may take away as the lessons learned.
Right. So the second definition of see, it seems to be, let's say, not exactly in line with what you've said, but closer. So if I read that as well, so this is the definition of see, to see. Discern or deduce after reflection or from information. And then also it says understand. I must admit, it still sounds limited from the way you explained it, Gregory. Can you just remind us again how you put the words, that phrase of seeing and believing? Seeing is believing, sorry.
Just stress that the expression, the phrase seeing is believing, is only a figure of speech. Which figure of speech is used to connote many other things. However, only the intuitive sense of it, only that is to be taken as useful meaning. For, as we've just seen, or as we've just discussed, no one sees the wind, yet they believe in the wind. No one has seen an atom or a photon or an electron in the scientific, yet they have faith in the effects of these descriptions. And what one is stressing here is these expressions are more of figures of speech which must be taken as such, and one tries to absorb the intuitive meaning of seeing is believing. For if one takes them superficially, then the expression breaks down immediately. You can't get far with it.
Thank you for that answer and clarification. I want to, following from what you've said, something comes to mind about, like evidence or proof, and then to believe in something you need proof or evidence. But then from what you've just said there, you mentioned the word effects. So something, let's say, exists and you can not see it, like the wind. You can't see the wind, but you can see the effects of the wind. So that sort of verifies or proves that the wind is there, even though you can't actually see it. So what I want to do next, Gregory, because the second word in our phrase "seeing is believing" is believe. So I would like to go through the definition of believe. And so if I looked in the dictionary, and it came up with a number of, I don't want to call different definitions, they're just parts of the definition. So if I go through them, so believe, the first part of the definition, it says, accept that something is true, bracket is something is true, and then comma, it says, especially without proof, which I must say I find that a bit comical. So believing, Gregory, according to the let's say first part of the definition, says accept that something is true, especially without proof. So that seems to be almost, well, it is in conflict from what the title is tonight, which is seeing is believing. You're supposed to see before what you see is what makes you to believe in it. But in the definition of belief, it's saying accepting something is true without proof. And I'm now
Well,
starting to doubt the definitions already.
well, that is why one brought that counter example. The second case is that of a mirage. You see a mirage. You may believe in a mirage, but it is not there. Again, this points to that these expressions, seeing is believing, should not be taken superficially. The nearest is to examine it very carefully and extract intuitively that which it offers. For the seeing is only a part. There are 5 senses that man has been granted: that of sight, that of hearing, that of taste, that of smell. So you will smell that there is honey, or that there is freshly baked bread, yet you haven't seen this baked bread, and yet you believe. However, things should not stop there. So one may take the intuitive meaning of seeing to be that of perceiving with one of the senses, one of the physical senses. As long as one may perceive with one of the physical senses, then that is the first step. There is other steps. Beliefs, most of the time, are things which are taken without further questioning, without further examination. And that is why one brought out the case of a mirage, where you will, in the case of a desert, you will see things which really are not there. Another simple example is if you have a cup of water, a glass of water, and you put your spoon in there, you will see that the spoon is bent. And for many who do not examine further, they will believe it. But for those who are not satisfied with that, who go a bit further for further examination, they themselves can convince themselves that that spoon which they left in the glass of water is not bent. Whether it's a spoon or a meter rule or a pen, is straight, but is more of an optical effect. So this is where optics comes in. Therefore, most of these figures of speech should never be taken superficially. The nearest one may go is to say that is the first step, that perception is the first step.
Thank you for that answer again, Gregory. We are already, what you have said is already clearly pointing to that this subject is deeper and bigger than what you might think. And then the more you explore it, you think, oh, there's things that we are going to, well, obviously discover, but it's like we need to be aware that, what you see, if I can say like that, may not be the reality. As you have pointed out, the first step is perception, to recognize that there's a perception. And when you think of the word perception, it doesn't give you the idea that that is the reality. It just gives you the word perception. That's how you see it. This is how, and you could have 2-3 people standing in front of the same event, you could say, or same picture. I'm not quite sure how to put it, but once you do that, you have that picture. Each person could see it differently, Gregory, because everybody has a. Yes, we all have the 5 senses, the eyes, the ears, and so on. Those those senses. But each person, well, they could. What I'm seeing, Gregory, in this subject is, yes, all of us have the eyes, and unless the 3 people are looking at something, only 2 of them see it and the third doesn't. And it doesn't mean that the eye is not working in the third person. It's just that they're not somehow focused on that or seeing that, while the other 2 are. So it's like a very interesting this discussion. So even the word perception gives the clue that yes, we have those 5 senses, but how are you using these 5 senses? Are you fully alert in them, or so there's a quite a level of understanding here that we need to go to. So Gregory, and so many questions are coming into my mind, and I'm thinking, Gregory, can a human being truly perceive, or you could say, the truth of a situation, or they only see a perception, meaning that an angle of it, they never see, what's coming to me. You never see the whole truth about a situation. What's coming to me, Gregory, is, let's say somebody does something to you, right? And let's say they hit you. You think it is intentional, but it could be accidental. And it may not be obvious that it is accidental, but you could perceive it to be intentional. And then, of course, you will react however you react, but with that assumption or presumption or perception that it is an intentional. And yet, actually, from the person who did it, it was accidental. So my question, Gregory, there, can a human being really see the true picture, or is it always I don't want to use, I'm using this word in quotes, like a prejudiced, or I'm trying to say a partial picture. Let me say it like that. So can one really see the whole truth, or is it always a partial picture, Gregory?
Again, one has to be circumspect, because there are many paths to the question you have just posed. One is referring to the whole truth. But before one goes there, the perception of the motive, which perception comes across when one is vigilant enough, vigilant in the sense of being intuitive. For only through such intuitiveness can one perceive. When one refers to perception, one must at the same time come to clarity that there are forms which are real, forms which may interact with one. It is one's perception of those forms that it's been discussed. How do you perceive the forms which you yourself have not seen, have not heard? Some of these forms are not the gross material forms that you can hold in your hand. A simple example, we all think. No one can deny that they don't think. But how many have been able to hold their thoughts in their hand? Because the thoughts belong to a different category, which category is not the gross material like you and I can hold, but much finer. Therefore, one's perception is highly dependent on the tool which is used for perception. What do we mean by that? Here we are in gross matter. You are there in London. I am here in Brussels, and yet we are able to communicate. So there must be a tool with which we use that acts as a medium of communication. Medium. And when our communication, which is more like a language, gets across, you immediately are able to pick it up and make sense of it. Therefore, if one is to consider the big expression language, for one to be able to perceive, there must be that which is common, which is homogeneous, and in its formation, it's like there's an attraction. You are only able to perceive like with like. For when one speaks, the ear listens to it, the ear is able to perceive. When there is light there, the eye is able to perceive. Therefore, there must be something which nature has granted us through which we can use for perception. For that is how it is. We are able to use that because that which nature has granted us enables us to recognize the form of that signal or of that sensing or of that burst of energy. So the takeaway in this particular case, it is you perceive like with like. For if something is not like the other one, then you are not able to perceive. It will flow past you, for the vibrations are much finer. But here we are with our discussions. You are able to listen to me. I'm able to listen to you. People out there are able to pick, because there is something that does the transmission and the deciphering through which, one can make sense of it. Were you to speak another language other than English, of course I will hear the language. Doesn't mean I understand it. Say, if you have to speak Japanese, I may recognize that it's Japanese or Chinese, but I will not understand it. So what we have just done is to have some form of clarification on perception, that only like forms can detect like forms and then make an interpretation out of it.
Thank you, Gregory, again for this answer. There's so much more to discuss from that, so we will continue in a moment. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. This is a Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrusheen. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or getting a copy for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic we are discussing tonight is seeing is believing. Seeing is believing. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. And just to let you know, we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. That's Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. Also, we're broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, then space live stream. Yes, Bless Radio 1, number 1, space live stream. That's for the live show. Our shows are always recorded. You can listen to the recording of the show also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com, type in Bless Radio 1, the number 1, then space Grail Message, and space the topic of the show. For tonight it is Seeing is Believing. Seeing is Believing. And we have our previous shows as well. You should be able to find it there. So, Gregory, we mentioned these perceptions, and we mentioned that you need, for you to, there are various perceptions. For example, we know about the 5 senses. And then you mentioned about thoughts. And we can't see thoughts, but let's say there is a way somebody could perceive these thoughts. Whatever way it is, they would need to be having the same tool, which is like of the form of the thoughts, or can see these thought forms, you could call it like that. So, and that is just one form. I started to think, we've talked about the 5 senses, which are the physical senses, but suddenly we are now talking about even their non-physical senses, which we haven't really said what they are. And I mean, as you said, if you want to see something, you have to have that same tool, which is the same form, otherwise you can't see it. So, and you see that already from the 5 senses. Smell is only for smell. You can't see with the smell, your nose, you can only smell. And the same, the eyes are only for seeing. It doesn't make, you can't smell with the eyes. So you can see it's very clearly defined, these senses. And then they only see one aspect. So my question, which was the previous question about can we really see reality, even the true reality or the full reality? Well, if you are using only one perception, then surely you can only see it one aspect of the reality, which is that form, that particular part. And then since we you've talked about thought forms, you can already see that there are many forms or levels of perception. So I'm almost confused where to go next with the questions, Gregory. So, I mean, there's one thing I wanted to say earlier, which I will just say it right now as a general statement, that, we are told not to judge. And, but we do still make judgments on people. Oh, you did this, you're guilty of this, whatever it is. And then as, we sort of condemn people or label people that they are bad or whatever they are, we just give them a name. And then somehow your inside might say, your inner self might say, oh, is that really the case? Maybe, like I gave the example, Gregory, that somebody punches you and you think it was deliberate and intentional, and the person who punched you says it was accidental. And then it's like, is it one person's word against another, or is it how, it's just that's how you perceived it, and you now made a judgment based on that. And that, in the end, you realize, well, you can't really see. You're judging, but are you judging on a full understanding or on a part understanding? So, okay, I think, Gregory, although I know this seems to be expanding the subject so much, I'd like to ask you, Gregory, we have talked about the other five senses. What are the other perceptions that can we say that exists?
There are basically five senses or tools for perception. These tools of perception act as channels through which a certain impression is articulated within the human personality. So, what we then have is that the articulation of smell, which on some occasion is pleasant, on some other occasions is not pleasant, that of a decaying, say, body doesn't seem pleasant, yet that of freshly baked bread is pleasant. These tools, like I stressed, are only channels through which sensations are passed to the inner man. A very simple example is that here we are in our discussions, and there are listeners. The question which should strike every personality is, what is man? Is man what one sees, what one perceives, what one touches, what one smells, what one hears with the physical senses. For if reality has to be discussed, then it will be that which is real is that coordinates these perceptions, these senses, these tools, these channels that have passed these sensory perceptions to a central place, first to the intellect, which intellect subsequently, after working on it, passes it to the back brain and then to the inner personality as one big impression. So expressions from without, which has come as smell, as sight, and as touch, are passed back to the inner personality, which inner personality is not of the physical body, but that which is of a different species, however, uses the tool which we refer to as the physical body to experience. It may sound strange, but it's very natural. Here we are passing information between yourself and myself and the listener through tools. These tools pass that information to the other side. These tools which we use are not ourselves, but are only tools. In the case of the physical body, that tool is what has been granted to you for an earth life in order to experience. And in experiencing, in accordance with the laws through which the inner personality came into existence, in accordance through which the physical body came into existence, one is now able to use these impressions that have assailed from the outside to go into the inside and strike the inner man for further recognition. The key thing here is the recognition. When recognition dawns, it's as if the bandage has fallen. And in that case, we now come to understand. To understand means to recognize the structure through which such impressions have reached us, that has passed through processes and has reached the inner man. He then uses that for maturity, or he becomes aware, more aware in the earthly sense, and if it uses that experience for maturity, it becomes more conscious or more self-conscious. That means is that it becomes austere, is able to recognize more, it comes to an extent where it understands the activities which abide here in the gross material physical plane. It needs it for its maturity. That is why it is here.
Thank you for that, Gregory. You have covered so much in this answer. And our topic gets, yes, it's getting deeper and expanding, but it's like almost, it's quite hard to keep up with everything. It's not that I'm saying anything that you're making anything difficult. It's just that the topic keeps expanding. And you brought in so many points here: intellect, you could say consciousness, self-consciousness. You mentioned that we are in this gross material world, but this is just basically these are tools. But then there's, like you could say, the personality, which is using these tools. So it's quite, not that it's difficult to take it in, but it's quite a lot there that you have brought out. So, and yet it all works together. We know this world is a system that we live in. And yes, of course, we know about breathing, eating, growing, so many things. And then that's what we see in the physical world. But that is only, as you just, when you're talking about perceptions, there are different levels of perception, but that's only one world. You could say the gross material world. But the big question is, what is man? And, so what is man and what is his abilities? And what is or the human being, what is a human being and what are his abilities? And his or her abilities. And so we are very well familiar with the physical ones, of course, material ones, but the other ones, we are not so familiar. Now, Gregory, you also mentioned earlier that, it's like, works with like, like detects like things. So, obviously with our physical five senses, we detect anything that is physical, you could say, which is physical, which is in the, in that category. And then there's this, but you mentioned there was intellect as well, Gregory. And then also earlier on, not just in this last answer, about the intuition or the intuitive perception. So I'm going to try and ask you to bring them together. So Gregory, these different perceptions that we carry, are they meant to work? When I say separately, it doesn't sound right, but I mean, how do they sort of work together? Is there, like, one is higher, more, far, there's a saying also, far seeing. Is there one which is more far seeing than the other? So it's like, it is more, can I call it higher? Is something higher? Some of the perceptions are higher than others. How do they work together? I agree.
Basically, one may ask that same question to oneself. The five senses, the sense of smell, the sense of sight, the sense of hearing, these channels, which are tools which pick up the specific vibration, uses the brain first as a gathering point for coordination. Therefore, the brain is the first place that is able to associate a particular object, a particular form, to using the five senses that is granted man, and to say, okay, a unique identifier is being stamped into it. Very simple example. Here you are, as a child, you saw your friend, you played in the same playground, yet as you grew up and they went different ways, one day you have a phone call. Only through the voice are you able to recognize. You haven't seen, you haven't smelled, yet you are able, through the voice of that personality, to recognize, which only shows that these different senses pass their perceptions to the brain for a short run, then to the back brain on the long run, and then finally to the spirit for maturity. For what then happens? That friend of yours, because you have stored that piece of information, with a call you now received, you are able to pick and identify. So these are practical examples. What takeaway should one have? That these senses are gifts granted to the human personality here on earth to be able to have a fulfilling life in accordance with the laws that have granted the personality the possibility to mature. Subsequently, one will find that one's experiencing is such that it is not arbitrary. As one matures, the sensing grows that there seems to be an order, very well ordered sequence of things that one can only sense but cannot yet grasp. Then it becomes clear that these tools are only tools for transmission. And in further reflection, the question now keeps striking: where do these sensing, the forms which were generated outside, where do they go? To the brain, or is it further? So these are the things which should strike every human personality. That these senses which we have are gifts for personal maturing.
Thank you, Gregory, for your answer again. Things are becoming clearer. Even if we repeat something, it just the concept become clearer and more, let's say, established. So thank you for that. I mean, this subject tonight, we can go anywhere. I can like turn left, I run right, or go upside down. So what I want to ask Gregory, you early on you gave example of mirage and things like this, and on the earth we know people do play tricks. You can say like magicians. They do illusion tricks with illusion, and even we have puzzles which play with our eyes and make us see a pattern, and then let's say I don't have anything specific in my head right now, but you definitely get some, you could say, puzzles where they look like a certain pattern, but then when somebody points something else out about it, then you see maybe another pattern, and it's like again another. Then you start wondering, what actually am I seeing? Is it partial picture, or is it the full picture? And every time it seems to be a partial picture, or even what I want to say, Gregory, even we could be deceived, even with these senses. And that's not that somebody has, let's say, put a poison in our senses to poison our senses, but somehow we can be misled, through some trickery or deception. So my question on that, Gregory, can we rely on our senses?
Actually, the senses, whatever perceptions they bring in, need to be examined. The challenge always is that for many, they rely on static pictures. At the beginning, when, in quotes, photographs were taken, maybe about a century or a century and a half ago, it was basically static pictures, which gave the instance at a particular time. Subsequently, it was found that it was possible to have a long sequence of static pictures. And that is what was later referred to as motion pictures. Those motion pictures give you a more approximate behavior, a more operational behavior of the personality through time. In many a time in our judgments are based on fixed, static pictures. Therefore, if one has to rely 100% on that which is static, then there will be many exceptions, many errors will be introduced. For events in life, occurrences in life are not static, they are dynamic. And unless deep within yourself, in your observations, in your vigilance, you yourself are dynamic, refreshing everything that comes to you, continuously examining them, then the risk is there that you run into a situation where your judgment is not as real, is not as near the full picture as another who has not done the way you've gone, but has remained dynamic. And because one is in that dynamic mode, not only in their thinking, but also in their deep inner perceiving, which one refers to as one's intuition, that person is able to come to a final judgment because of the evidence he himself or herself or she herself has permitted to see things so very differently. It's like that of a child. When we were children, we could see, and as time goes on, you keep growing. So one should not use the limited instance fixed in time to make a judgment, whereas the possibility is there to be mobile in one's sensing, to be dynamic in one's sensing, and one will come to a better appreciation. After all, the seasons are not static.
Thank you again for this answer, Gregory. The picture of this phrase, seeing is believing, is, let's say, getting clearer and wider. So we'll continue further. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abrushi. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is seeing is believing. Seeing is believing. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us is on our UK number. It is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. Also, you can listen to us on YouTube live. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1, space live stream. That's listening to the live show. And you can also listen to a recording, which is the next day. Also go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1 again, space Grail Message, and then space the topic of the show, which tonight is Seeing is Believing. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows as well from the same website. Gregory, I want to now go into some more aspects of seeing is believing. It's meant to be a spiritual discussion program, and let's say there are many concepts in the spiritual world. People talk about heaven, angels, other beings, and life after death. We have even people who are mediums, who can supposedly communicate with the people who have passed on. And Even there are clairaudience. There's so many, you could say, variety of spiritual concepts, if I can say concepts, or realities. But as we said, seeing is believing, and the seeing is through perception. So now let's start with some of these concepts or realities and see if we can perceive them. So let's start, Gregory, with like say life after death. So yes, let's put the where that occurs, Gregory. Let's try to point to the where does that happen? So when we die, Gregory, where do we go? What happens to us?
To answer this particular question, it comes up again and again in different discussions. Many times, it seems that we have forgotten to reflect. And what burdens us, what worries us, is where we are going. But we very well know that it is the decisions we make now, or to put it bluntly, it is the decisions we've made in the past that have formed the channel that has become present. In the same vein, it is the collections of past decisions that pave the way or the path to where we will be going here on earth. When one understands that clearly, then one should ask, what decisions did I make before I was born? What decisions did I make before conception at all? With such questions, then it might occur to you that one must have existed somewhere to one must have existed somewhere to have made that decision that enabled that personality to have taken over during conception the body that is being prepared, and subsequently at delivery one became a child and keeps making decisions to mature through the earth life. Therefore, it is the decisions we have made, the retroactive decisions we have made, that have paved the way for our present circumstances, and the decisions we continue to make, which will pave the way when the physical body has been dropped. If along the line, in our activities, the personality, by personality, the inner personality, which is alive, which is what controls the physical body, if it has been making those decisions which are in accordance with the laws through which it came into existence, the laws that have enabled him to be born on earth, the laws that have seen him all through the earth life, if these decisions have been upbuilding or being of upbuilding, then in all naturalness, when the physical body has been dropped, it will, in accordance with these same laws, which laws provided it with the physical body, provided it with the accompaniment of the physical body, which are the senses, provided it with the intellect. These same laws will guide him based on his weavings. Based on his weavings and the maturity he or she has attained. Then one will be guided to such planes where one can further experience the consequences of their past activities. It only means for many who have been involved in terrible, evil action, in which they have had to tie knots because they have exposed themselves to such. What then happens? These same laws, in faithful fulfillment, will help to prepare a place where they can indulge in such. Therefore, you will now have places which one may refer to as hell. Hell in the sense that due to their affinity, what they like to dish out to others, destruction, thievery, wickedness, in accordance with homogeneity, with that which one may refer to as attraction, the coming together to form a society, you then find many a personality will now gravitate to such. If, on the other hand, that personality, whilst here on earth, has been involved with that which is all built, supporting its neighbor in the true sense, not wanting anything in return, but support that wells from the Spirit. Such activities will help pave the way, which way he or she must traverse whence it has dropped the physical body, which a process which is called death. Many of these, which one had just referred to, are only a tip of the iceberg. For more clarifications, in fact, to get the whole picture, the complete picture, one may examine the work in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Agrushin. There, one will find all that one will ever need.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. And listeners, if you, as Gregory mentioned there, if you are interested to know more, we refer you to the Grail Message. So those of you who would like to know where to find the Grail Message or want more, would like to get more information, they can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. That's www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. Gregory, how you define, we were talking when I asked you about life after death, and you mentioned that we have the life before death already, before birth, that we were already around before that, and then you mentioned about we making decisions, So decisions have consequences, as we hear, and our actions lead to reactions. So decisions leading to consequences, and so consequences for us when we pass on into, in quotes, heaven or hell. Now, I was thinking, Gregory, the other thing I mentioned was mediums, who have obviously some perceptions of being able to communicate with the dead, the ones who have passed on. And when you hear accounts of these conversations of the mediums with these dead people, and with the relatives sort of wanting to know what is, just somehow they want to know what the dead relative wants, thinking, or I don't know if they're thinking of advice or what. I noticed they seem to still concern themselves with earthly matters in the what the mediums share from the people who have passed on, and I don't think the people who have passed on, who you'd think know more, now that they know that they're still alive in this next life, you can say, not on the earth but in the next world, would like to share that, that this is another world here, and you'd think they would like to share that with the people here on the earth, but more they seem to be concerned about the family, how the relatives are doing here, or what they would advise, and so on. So I want to understand how come that these people who have passed on don't seem to mention that through the medium.
In the first instance, the maturity of the person who visits a medium come into this. There are many who, in their activities, have so much matured spiritually that they are no more tied to the pettiness which men call family issues. Because they have come to that realization, they move far away. There are also some who, due to their activities, are still so much tied to the joys and the trivialities of the earth. There are some who are tied to, say, money. Others are tied to food, tied to all sorts of things. And because they still have that strong urge, they remain in the closest neighborhood of the earth. For now, the physical body which they had used in making themselves known has lain prostrate. It means it's of no use to them. Their spiritual, or the spirit, which is actually the inner person, or what they call the inner man, is now unable to make use of that physical body. So it is left aside. But that strong urge still remains. Strong urge of family. There are some that have the strong urge of drinking, and therefore they go very close to those places where people exhibit that strong urge of enjoyment, of excess drinking. The same thing with that of excess eating. The same thing is that with that of excess so-called sexual activities, because this is what makes them, this is what they're interested in. In that case, they are unable to sever themselves and move forward or to move upwards. In many cases, it is these ones who are unable to sever themselves who keep hanging around, whom many a medium is able to perceive. For if one has fulfilled the tasks that it has come here on earth to fulfill, why should it still remain here? Having done your task, you move on. Have you ever seen someone who remains in the same class, say in the secondary, you or in the primary school? Do you remain in the same class when you have fulfilled the task which you are supposed to have done in the particular class? You move forward. If you have not fulfilled it, the possibility is there that you remain in the same class. Or if you have a strong urge, you may be attracted. And the challenge is the circumstances, which was there a few moments ago, a few years ago, a few maybe tens of years or 50 years or 100 years ago. These circumstances have changed. But since that strong urge still remains, you remain in the closest neighborhood of the earth to know, to enjoy battles where people go fighting, skirmishes, all right? Also places where people are undergoing terrible suffering because you yourself enjoy such. On the contrary, for those who don't have that urge, who haven't tied any knots to hold them back, they move forward. Families, in quotes, are only temporary. For before many a person incarnated on earth, he had been somewhere else before an incarnation on earth. He must have been on earth before, and through some ties, now comes back as a family. There are some who have no ties, but have tried to come through a family so that they can fulfill a specific purpose. One must be dynamic in one's thinking. And it is selfishness to expect when one has lived an earth life to remain in the neighborhood of the earth to keep answering questions or family questions as if one's existence depends on providing such solutions to families because they were born or they shared the same gene or the same blood. So therein lies the problem. Why you now have many a person, due to the activities, being locked in the nearest neighborhood and all sorts of behaviors which many have perceived. Even many a medium, a genuine medium, not the ones who want to make money out of mediumship, can already sense that, strictly speaking, men or individuals are never alone. There are many others around them. These many others around them are those that form the one's conscience. One should reflect on these things.
Thank you so much for your answer there, Gregory. I also mentioned other beings, let's say in heaven, which are, let's say, angels, fairies. Some people supposedly they can perceive them, and I'm thinking, Gregory, the people, the spiritual messengers or teachers. I'm wondering, and then when those spiritual teachers talk about the beings, angels, and other beings, and heaven, and so on, and in the end, of course, the Almighty too, the Creator. Are they perceiving those beings? Like, let's say, if you were sitting in front of me right now, I can see you with my physical eyes. So this is like a perception that way. And then, like you said, the other one was when somebody, a friend calls you after many years, and you just listen to the voice on the phone. You straight away recognize that person from the voice. When these spiritual teachers talk about heaven and beings and the Creator and so on, are they seeing those things, or is it being transmitted to them? Because there are some teachings that said, oh, the angel, whoever is the angel, spoke to the messenger, and then that messenger passed it to us. So what I'm asking is, how are this knowledge of the world, you can say the world of the beyond, maybe I can put it this way, is received by the person bringing that knowledge?
Thanks for this question. In the course of our discussion, one had mentioned like perceives like. That which is unlike cannot perceive another unless there must be a connection. That means likeness, homogeneousness. When you refer to the word being, what is referred to as beings are those creatures which are responsible for the maintenance of nature, maintenance of creation. Those beings stand in the will of the one who gave them that task. Therefore, they do the maintenance. You will find here on earth, there are beings which are responsible for the creation, the maintenance of mountains, of hills, of rivers, even of the ocean. There are many who, in or through their blood radiation, specific blood radiation, are able to perceive the presence of these beings. There are some who, through the presence, the vibrations of their blood radiation, are able to hear, not to see, these nature beings. There are some who are able to see. Well, by seeing doesn't mean they are using their physical eyes. As one had already pointed out, like is able to detect like. Therefore, it means that the capability of the human personality that wears or that uses the physical body has that inner capability, and when it uses the inner capability, is able to perceive through any of the five senses. And therefore, one may refer to one's inner eyes, or one's inner hearing, or even some smell, and even some touch. For when we all go to sleep and we see ourselves in other places, interacting with people, we still have our physical body, which we know lies in the bed or in the place where we are resting. And yet, deep within, we are able to move from one place to the other. In a similar way, the human personality wears the bodies through which it may interact with other beings, which beings are responsible for the maintenance of nature, maintenance of the universe. The challenge has been the non-clarification of the structure of the universe. For only one has the picture of the structure of the universe, which picture or complete picture is well elucidated in the work In the Light of Truth. Only then can you form the right conceptions in understanding the works of these nature beings. And there are many of them. It's not only nature beings that there are of different hierarchy. Only in the highest can one now speak of angels. But before then, there have been, and there still are, in the different realms, in the gradations, moving from up downwards, there are personalities who work exclusively for the maintenance of that realm which they have their task. Therefore, to be able to perceive them, one must open up himself or herself to be able to see or to perceive them in their activities. It may not be as difficult as many think, for only through simplicity and humility, in the love that one advances to all that there is, only then can one make connection, not in the calculating love, but in the spiritual love, which considers only that which is of benefit to everyone, rather than what they themselves can accrue for themselves.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. This is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrushi. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, MESSAGE.com. And you're listening to Bless Radio. As I said, we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, blessradio1.com. That's the number one, blessradio1, the number one.com. Also, we're broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number one, then space live stream. That's one word, two words, Bless Radio 1 and then live stream. And then you can also listen to the recording of this show. Go again on to youtube.com and then type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number one, then space Grail Message, Grail Message, MESSAGE, and then space the topic of the show, which tonight is Seeing is Believing. Seeing is Believing. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows. And if you have, so as I mentioned now, the topic is Seeing is Believing. If you have any questions or comments, you're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. Gregory, I'm going to change tack a little bit now and talk about things that we hear in the news. For example, especially, let's say, criminal cases in the courts. People are convicted and with whatever evidence that is, put forward, and then let's say this is a real crime and the person convicted is the culprit, and then the culprit doesn't admit to that and is not willing to wants to fight to claim his innocence in courts, and let's say with his clever lawyer they find a technical point where the evidence can be because the procedure of the courts has not been followed. They go and appeal, and then now the verdict is thrown out, and the victims or families of the victims suffer double pain. They did all the hard work to bring somebody they thought to, convicted of whatever crime it was, and then suddenly it's all overturned because of some technicality. Now, and then Gregory, there's another thing that I thought of. In the old days, there's a famous story from the Bible about the wise King Solomon and two women who claimed to be mother of this one child. Obviously, only one woman could be the, assuming they're not both lying, only one of them could be the true mother. And so they came to King Solomon and he asked the question. Well, he said, obviously he asked who claimed to be the mother. They both claimed to be the mothers. And then he said, okay, I'm going to sacrifice this child. And then he killed the child. And immediately one woman said, no, give it to the other woman. I don't want him to die. So then the King Solomon realized, okay, the real mother is the one who's saying give it to the other woman, because obviously she loves her child too much to let him die. So my question, Gregory, on this point is, let's say, as we said, King Solomon was a wise man, and that was a system at that time. Now in today's world, there are judges and jury who are making decisions about crimes and so on, and we see things, let's say, which in our heart feels like that this is how it's supposed to be, and then let's say because of, in quotes, technicality, things are overturned, and it's like just you wonder if the justice really can be done with this man-made systems. So my question, Gregory, is can justice be done in this modern world, really? Or should we just leave it to, in quotes, God's hands, when the the laws we mentioned about the natural laws, we have make decisions, there are consequences, and let those laws take care of the judgment.
The questions you ask are many. Therefore, one will use an overarching picture. You mentioned the case of Solomon. And Solomon had to find a way to reach a decision. And hence, that occurred to him. He said something which he wasn't going to carry out. These are simple allegories which are passed down to teach one lessons. That which you love, you must allow that to exist continuously. That means you yourself must support. And that is very understandable. It means you are prepared to let it go, even if that person has to leave your immediate vicinity. But what worries one is when one hears wise people. And that brings the case of the so-called 3 wise men. These 3 wise men have to be mentioned, such that lessons must be learned. At the birth of Christ, these 3 kings were faithfully led to the manger, and they brought gold, silver, all sorts, dropped it. Indeed, the 3 wise men, and thereafter they left. The protection of the child, which should have been of paramount, which they themselves would have sensed intuitively, hence the continuous stress on sensing intuitively, that they did not see. At that same time, it was recorded that Herod, as king, has heard about the birth of a child and was slaying the first child of those who have just come in. So, what does that tell you? When in these writings people talk about those with wisdom. Wisdom has to do with that which holds, which is the law. Only then can one talk of wisdom. These so-called 3 wise men packed their things and left. And in the course of time, that personality whom they were supposed to have protected was left unprotected. So much so that when his mission started, he was already in jeopardy. So much for the wisdom of the 3 kings. Lessons must be learned. They brought gifts, material gifts, and that is what is copied again and again, even at Christmas times. But that which is more important, which is more durable, that love which protects, that love which ensures that there is a balance in it, that love is ignored. And what does the whole world do at Christmas times? Like the 3 foolish kings, they still bring gifts. That enduring love is still lacking. One only is a diversion, but it had to be brought in so many can see the form of love which is mentioned nowadays. That love which the real mother of the child had and is prepared to let the child go and leave. The question we should ask ourselves, how do you stand when it comes to that which is dear to you? Do you want it to thrive? So there are many things which can be learned from these very simple stories, but they may not be taken superficially. And the justice which is referred to here on earth, which is so one-sided, for it is no justice at all. However, in the wisdom of the Lord, which has been placed in creation, that which a man has put in place, albeit sown, that in multiples he himself or herself must reap. So many have become shareholders in the reactions which are to come. And one can only wish them strength. For whilst here on earth, many things which happen have no basis in wisdom, have no basis in justice. Maybe it may be referred to as injustice. For when you observe very carefully, you don't have to do any wrong before you go to jail. It is possible to look for a rule within the so-called justice system, which will even find you guilty even before you were born, or find you guilty after you have departed the earth. Such is the so-called wisdom which is referred to here on earth. But wisdom, real wisdom, is not separated from the truth, for they are one. So also the truth, not separated from love.
Thank you for that, Gregory. The picture you provided, at first you think, oh, that's not the question he's asking. Is like a diversion, like you say, but then there's a point in it, because the focus of the word wisdom is all in a context, wisdom in what, let's say, wisdom in a shallow world of the, let's say, of the earthly, or wisdom of a higher world, which is of love, and which sees a bigger picture. In fact, what I want to say, Gregory, yes, we've got those 5 senses. We've got, let's say, the intuitive perception, we've got the intellect, got all these, you could say, tools and abilities, and they function, as you say, each one detects the same material as itself, as you say, like material with the like tool detects the like material. But then there's this context, Gregory, which you've just pointed to now, let's call it wisdom and love, which is much wider than the, let's say, general earthly thinking that we might have. We talked earlier about the mediums and the families, and as if family is the most important thing. In fact, we discussed that last week. Family was a topic, family, community, and society. So, what I want to ask now is, how do we this seeing is believing? Okay, that's a perception. We have understood that, and there's different levels of perception. But Gregory, there's a focus, there's a context that we need to be aware of. Is it through the perception that we discover, Gregory, what is it we are meant to do, in a situation? Those three kings, when Jesus was born, they thought they came to welcome Jesus, thinking he's also a king, and they brought these gifts, but they actually had a higher task, which somehow it didn't occur to them, and they left Jesus unprotected, as you said. And soon enough, we saw what Herod did, killing the first born or first child. That was, to basically, in a way, to kill Jesus, basically. But he didn't know who Jesus was or where he was, so he thought, okay, I kill all the first sons. And then those three wise men, so-called wise men, are supposed to protect Jesus, but they didn't know that. So my question, Gregory, is how can we come to that awareness of what is required from us in a situation?
Again, one must reflect very carefully and calmly. Whatever situation one is in, that situation must have manifested through continuity. That means you didn't just fall from the sun or from the moon into that situation. That situation developed until you yourself got in there. Behind many things, you cannot see the threats which has been spun in the past, which have brought you there. Many times, for many who, in quotes, play the lottery, and they are absent-minded, consider they win some big money, and they are so very happy because they sense something must have occurred that made them fortunate. There are others who, for one reason or the other, along the line, they are not sure of the threats that have been spun, that have brought them to a particular place, and some experience some accident, some even lose their lives. Before any scenario, threats must have been spun, which threats are a response of that which man had sown in the past. Therefore, every personality must stand in vigilance, in the sensing of its environment. sensing of its environment, and knowing how to respond to it. The expression watch and pray, which watching means to be vigilant, to sense any vibration which is not upbuilding, and at the same time to be able to use that which one has, one's capability, to find one's path in such a way that they are supposed to build up and not to destroy, such that the reactions, in quotes, the karma, which, whether it be good or bad karma, when they touch that particular person, by that time, one must have improved in such a way that those reactions will not bring that which is bad to that particular person. This calls for continuous vigilance in our thoughts, in our day-to-day interaction with others around us. Only through perpetual vigilance can man arrive at its goal, which is to mature here on earth, such that after an earthly life is able to rise higher and higher, becoming self-conscious until it arrives home in the paradise of man. That is how it is meant to be. But what has happened? Many a person does not calm down to reflect, or does not sense his intuition anymore. And many a thing that could have been perceived even before it becomes physical reality are missed. And before long, you find they now fall into that particular scenario. In those days, you will find, in fact, one would not say those days, when there was the tsunami in Asia, it was thought that all the animals perished. But it was found the animals moved away. For these animals were able to heed the warning of the nature beings around that particular place, and therefore they quietly moved away. But man, in his greediness, in order to enjoy, to have physical enjoyment, shuts himself out of the sensing in a particular environment. And when the water came, it overwhelmed many people. Therefore, the only thing one may mention here is be spiritually or be intuitively alert. Intuitive vigilance is what is required.
Thank you for that clear answer and message for our listeners. We've come to the end of the show tonight, listeners. Hope you enjoyed the show, talking about seeing is believing. And we'll be back again as usual next Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time with another topic. So, Gregory, anything you'd like to say goodbye to our listeners?
Wishing them a beautiful week.
Thanks for that. And same from me. God bless. Catch up hopefully with you again next week. All the best, everyone. Take care. Good night.